Biden trying to start a war with Russia, and we haven't even got there. On the Windsor Ambassador Bridge, as we speak, police are engaging with peaceful truckers and removing them from the bridge because Joe Biden has made it clear to Twinkle Toes Trudeau, you better do something and use your federal government military power to open up that bridge because you're blocking up our own economic interest because we got to move those products into Canada. And the Biden economic numbers are in they're almost as bad as his job approval ratings. So I don't want to go to that story because that's low-hanging. It's too easy to go to. Mercedes, do you have something you want to say? Because I'm going to segue right now.
You're going to segue?
Into the Biden-Lester Holt fiasco. If you don't hear it from me, you may not hear how Biden just told Putin to go into the Ukraine now.
Yep.
I'll explain it to you in a minute.
Are you segueing now?
It's the stupidest, most shocking demonstration of mental deterioration in a presidential interview on the eve of potential hostile engagement. But go ahead.
Well, we didn't really finish. We were talking during the break about what we were talking about the last segment, and I just wanted to get what I think probably might happen, and I hear your thoughts on it, which is I think more than anything, after this next election, red states get redder, blue states get more purple. And I think you end up more so with civil war, but, conservative states, you like to call them sheep states, but sheep states that really band together in legal action, fighting for really the 10th Amendment, which is, these are actually state issues. Federal government doesn't have the right to overreach like that. So I think that would be like a first step we would see before anything would deteriorate into civil war. So anyways, I just wanted to throw that out there and see what you thought about that.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I would say that the polarization and the breaking apart of America because of the American left, you see, the glue that held America together was Christianity. It was the cement that put the bricks in place, which is a social contract. It's an ascribed to and agreed to code for how you live. That code was, to a great extent, based upon biblical truth and biblical absolutes. Once the left succeeded in mocking and making irrelevant the fact that there is a standard for human behavior and a standard for all morality, and made it all subjective, so that this is what basically the left has done in their intellectual theory of saying that all truth is relative. There is no absolute truth. And therefore, there's no fixed point for judging what sexual behavior is acceptable or not, what a definition of marriage is or not, what a definition of a family is or not, what a definition of a gender is or not, what a definition of a border is or not. You see, the collapsing of the West is because of a departure from its own Reformation base, its own biblical absolutes. And in the wake of that, you have a fragmenting culture. So now we have anybody can be right. This goes back to like the Old Testament. Everyone does what is right in his own eyes. So now you have a culture which is all selfish. Everyone, it's kind of amusing to me. You'll see, for instance, that Congress is at the lowest point ever in terms of their popularity. 20%, 80% of people think Congress is dysfunctional. Always stop and ask yourself, yeah, well then how come we have these congressional candidates getting elected with such wide margins? Oh, it's because overall Congress is dysfunctional, but every congressman represents his own district, and the district will give them like 100% support. So the reality is we're in danger of balkanizing America, which means left against right, black against white, gay against straight. And this is how the devil destroys nations. What Christianity offered was, it offered a value system that created tolerance with flexibility. But you can't even be tolerated as a Christian. This is when the left started shutting down the bakers and the florists and the chapels, so that with gay marriage, they just targeted. This isn't an issue of like a civil right discussion. This is a targeting situation. And our side's got to wake up. What they're doing in schools is they are now targeting. The left is about taking over the country. And so where Mercedes is coming along and saying, I think it's going to come down to states, sovereign states. What she's anticipating is this balkanizing of America will go to the point where California talks about seceding from the Union. No, they're never going to do something stupid like that.
California.
California has talked about this. This is a cycle of history. California 4 years ago, when if Trump is elected, we'll leave the country. So you'll have that kind of like that language going on out there. You'll have sanctuary cities is the first version of the balkanizing, where it's like your laws federally apply elsewhere, but our laws locally say it's a safe place for immigration. Anyone can come here. So you see territories that's already starting to talk that way. The way that this will go is Florida and Texas already and Alabama are a sharp contrast with New York State, California, and Washington and Oregon. And what does it tell you? America is already experiencing an early form of fragmentation based upon almost like the North and South in the Civil War, where slavery was in the southern states and it wasn't in the North. Industry was in the North. Agriculture was in the South. You're seeing this separation of America based upon values. Now, here's the part that is so incredibly important. I don't know how to underscore it sufficiently without sound effects. The data tells us now that the left is under, like COVID, a mental illness, a paralysis, a parasitic. Gad Saad has got a book on the parasitic mind, and it talks about idea viruses and how they can start to eat away at you, which we would call demonic oppression in Pentecostal theology. The left is under the delusion that our institutions have been taken over by white supremacists. This is a form of mental illness now. There's no data for this. There's no data, but it's a widespread belief that Trump supporters, like the truckers that are dealing with Trudeau, are intolerant, nationalist, Nazi flag-waving, Confederate flag people. So when you're dealing with an illness that believes that and starts from the premise that we must protect ourselves from the takeover of Trump's people who will burn the country down. For instance, when you have an election where some 30% of the country and 70% of the Republicans or 60% of Republicans believe that election fraud took place, but the left actually, their argument is the right is trying to take over voting. In other words, if you've got somebody that stole an election who is fueling up their base, saying to them the right is trying to steal elections, what you're dealing with is a real serious distortion of thinking. And you got organizations that are funded, like the Right Wing Watch, which is like left-wing nuts. Read anything they say. They will deliberately editorialize and bastardize quotes in order to make an argument to support their left-wing craziness, while they supposedly are exposing the right-wing craziness. So you've got a business built into this balkanizing of America and destroying of America. What the data says, however, is that the left has actually moved to the left. Actually, on a scale of 1 to 10, they've moved 2 to 3 points away from the middle. They're like, on a scale of 1 to 10, they went from a 5 to a 2 in terms of data. And this is data sets. The conservatives, on the other hand, have moved from a 5 to a 5.5 to 6. What that means is, on a scale of 1 to 10, conservatives have moved a little bit to the right. But the left has moved radically to the left from a 5 to a 2. Therefore, when they look at us slightly over the middle, they see us as a dangerous extremist threat. Now that, my friends, is like what I mean by the mental illness. And so when we talk about civil war, we remember the BLM riots. We remember Antifa. We remember the 200 groups that were called off by the left that Time magazine boasted of. They were ready to release them as shock troops to raise hell in America because they're a well-funded anarchy machine. And they're convinced that the conservatives, the evangelicals, the pro-life Catholics are dangerous extremists. How can you coexist when you're dealing with a mental illness? You have to retake the populist movement. It has to be led to see the serious situation we're in and recapture our institutions.
Are you thinking about clicking away? Don't click away. The whole podcast is over on lancewallnall.com/podcast. Go download the whole thing. Go there. They're there every day. The full uncensored truth just for you. Catch you over